It's probably one of the most commonly asked questions that I get on my national radio show. How can I make money on the side? I'm being laid off. We have a career change. I'm moving, whatever it may be. And of course, we always put together these lists. And lists are like, for example, you could be a transcriptionist. You could be a virtual shopper. You can do search engine optimization. You could be an engineer, whatever it is. But you always need that motivation, right? You need to have that spark to say, yes, I'm going to make this happen. Well, I read about this realtor by the name of Andrea Lard, and I was just like, oh my gosh, she did it. And I'm so happy that she's here to tell us her story about how she went from, no, she didn't go from rags to riches, no, but she went from having one career to spinning this off into another career that gives her immense freedom. And also she's making some money at the end of the day too. So Andrea, thanks for joining us. So how did you get started?
Haphazardly.
Okay, that's honest.
Before COVID hit, there were a few things that happened. It was a perfect storm. So my husband's a few years older than I am, and he started talking about retirement. And I am not ready to retire yet. And part of his retirement included possibly moving. As a realtor, you have to get licensed in every state that you transact business. And I'm licensed in Florida because we made that move years ago, and licensed in Colorado. I didn't want to have to go through that again, and he wanted to travel. And so I had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Because first of all, I felt like I'm just too old to start over again. I just don't want to. And here I am starting over again. So it came down to, I told him, let me have a 5-year plan. You want to retire in 5 years, I get 5 years to decide what I'm going to do. So COVID hit, real estate got a little funky with how do you show houses? People wanted to sell, but they didn't want to show their house. It got pretty litigious, buyer's remorse during the whole COVID situation, buying without seeing a house, that type of stuff. I thought, you know what, this isn't fun anymore. And I needed something to keep me occupied when being stuck at home. So I started blogging. I got on Fiverr, and I almost did it as kind of just a challenge. And I will tell you, I'm probably the oldest person on TikTok. And I was watching a gal on TikTok, one gal, she was claiming she had made over $300,000 a year on Fiverr writing blogs. And I thought, challenge accepted. And so I got on Fiverr. I started writing blogs for $25 a piece, and doing real estate blogs because that's what I know.
I was going to ask you. So it was something that you knew. So you knew real estate, and then what were these like individual agents that wanted you to write, like maybe about the state of the market or how to make your house showable and the best curb appeal? I mean, it was that type of stuff.
Honestly, no. So I always tease that real estate agents are cheap. Sometimes they don't want to pay for this type of stuff. So no, it was more so websites. So one of my first ones was moversville.com. And they talked about moving and having moving trucks and pods and all of these things. And so it was a buyer's list that I created. So it was more so websites reaching out, not necessarily individual real estate brokers.
See. Okay.
It eventually morphed to that, where I've got she's a real estate broker in New Jersey who does multi-million-dollar properties, and she pays me $250 to do exposés on her listings to put in magazines. But I started out with the $25 blogs and didn't think that it would go anywhere, and it exploded. It was crazy. From there, Fiverr reached out to me, a liaison from Fiverr, and asked me to join Fiverr Pro. And I thought, well, I don't, what is this? So I did a little bit of research, and she said, well, the one thing is you'll have to increase your price to $100. But nobody's going to pay me $100 to do 500-word blogs. There's no way. And she said, oh, no. I promise you, you will have more business than you know what to do with. And
wow.
She was right. She was right. The floodgates opened, and I started getting inquiries to do ebooks. Well, you do articles, but will you write an ebook for me? Or I've written a book, and will you edit it and look at it and rewrite sections for me? So it just kind of snowballed into something. And I thought, you know what, this is kind of fun. And I thought, wow, I might not have to show houses anymore. So my first year was 2021. I started in March, and I only made about $11,000 that first year on Fiverr. The second year, last year, was my second year, and I hit almost 100, or I almost made 80,000, but that was part-time because I was still working in real estate. So I was doing about 20 hours a week in real estate and 20 hours a week in freelance writing and editing. So I made 6 figures in real estate last year and 80 in freelance. This year I'm transitioning. Wow. I'm going to refer out my real estate business and try to retire from that and do writing full time.
You know, that is awesome. I love that. And so, I mean, you went from $25 thinking like, who would ever pay me $100? And then now you're at $250, and then I'm sure it keeps going up. Now, the thing with Fiverr is that what percentage does Fiverr take?
They take 20%. And some people ask, well, don't you have a problem with that? And I can tell you, I've been self-employed for 25 years, and there's a cost of doing business, right? You have marketing costs and expenses. So part of your marketing costs, and I know just tracking my expenses in real estate, that my marketing and expenses in real estate can run about 25% of my income. So for Fiverr to take 20% is the cost of doing business. Now, there are others, like I think Reedsy takes 10%, but I haven't gotten any business from Reedsy that would force me to give up Fiverr. Like Fiverr, that I will pay their 20% all day long.
Well, but see, you're an astute business person. Okay, because it is. Yeah. You always have a cost of doing business. And it's kind of like, how would you go find these people otherwise? What are you going to do? Build a website and say, I'm here? No, build it and find it. So,
yeah, no, I've tried.
Pardon me?
I have tried other avenues. So, for example, I ventured out onto Upwork and Reedsy and Contra, and I put up my own website. And out of all of those, Fiverr, I get daily inquiries. I probably get 20 messages a day asking me for services.
Wow, that's something. So when you were first starting out, if you had to go back and talk to yourself then, what mistakes did you make in retrospect going like, oh gosh, I never should have done that?
Well, I think the first thing is I set the bar too low. I did not realize the need for the service. And I think I would have went up quicker and made more money quicker if I would have had confidence in the services and the need for the services. Like I said, I just didn't realize that the need was there like it is. And so, yeah, I would have jump-started. And instead of $25, I would have went right to $100. No question.
So now what happens if you have a client who's, that irritating client, the one who's like everything that you do, they want to nitpick and say, can you redo this? Have you run across any of those people?
So in the very beginning, it's kind of learn as you go. And with these type of services and with Fiverr, you have to be very specific in what you include and what you don't include. And so I did have a couple of run-ins with a few people where they expected more than what the service provided. And I had to go back and tell them, no, you need to look at the description, look at what I put. So you have the opportunity to create your own FAQs. And in the beginning, I had 1 or 2 of those. I now have a half a dozen to a dozen FAQs that explain what's included, what's not included, explaining the process better, because I think that's where some confusion comes in. The other thing is making sure that the description of the service, you can weed them out before they push the order button.
That's true.
You know, for example, I had somebody just order, the service title said, I will write your nonfiction ebook. They asked me to write a dystopian story about a farmer in Russia when Stalin won the war. I'm like, first, you don't know what fiction and nonfiction is. So I had to have that order canceled. But you have to do it in a gentle way. And, you know, just apologize and say, oh, I'm sorry, maybe you misunderstood the service provided. So it's always, you have to be professional, because they may come back and say, hey, you were really nice to me and it was my mistake, but now I need something else.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's always easier to keep a current customer than go find a new one. That's for sure. Okay, so my last question for you is, if you look in your crystal ball, and if you project yourself out 2 or 3 years, what is your goal, your income goal from doing all this freelance work?
So this year, I am working to double my income from last year. And the reason is I plan on by next year being fully out of real estate. This year, I'm transitioning to refer all that business out to some partners in my office. And next year, I will be hands clean of that. But I have a lifestyle I've become accustomed to. So we've got to gear up. So there's a couple of things that I'm doing. I'm writing a book. It should be out by the end of summer. I would like to have it before summer, but we're working on it. And with that book, there's going to be a workbook. One of the things I find, I repeat myself constantly over and over about some things, and most of it is helping people write their own book. So I'm putting a book together for that. And it's going to have some collateral that goes with that. So that's going to be a whole process. The other thing I'm doing is expanding on my marketing outside of Fiverr. So I have done promotions on Fiverr where I move up in the ranking. But something else that I'm trying this year, my husband and my son are racing in Rocky Mountain Race Week. And I am I'm sponsoring the race car.
Oh, nice.
So it will be... Yeah, so it will be traveling. So, and it's kind of a take on ghostwriting. That's what most of my business comes from, is ghostwriting. And so it's going to say ghostwriter with a D.
Oh, nice.
With the D corrected, so it's crossed out, with the caret with the T to correct it, and then. And so I thought that was pretty cute. I'll be the ghostwriter during the race, and they're going to go through Kansas, Nebraska, Denver, Pueblo, and then back to Kansas. Wow,
that's awesome.
And in each place they have to race. They go down the drag strip, and then they race then they drive to the next race. So I hope out on the highway I get some exposure from that.
Well, and so if anybody wants to hire you, follow you, see what's going on, how do they do that, Andrea?
So my website is up, and it's creative5280.com. Always you can find me on Fiverr. I am all over the place. I was the first pro service provider for AI content. So I'm in bright green. You can't miss me. And then I'm not so much involved with social media, but you can find me on TikTok. And that is Andrea5280. And you can also find me on Facebook with the Creative 5280.
And where'd the 5280 come from?
I live in Colorado, born and raised.
Okay, got it. All right. Hey, Andrea, thanks for joining us. And I'm sure a lot of folks just got inspired to get off their butts and do something already, right?
Yeah, I hope so.